Hello, and welcome to Oui Talk. I'm Virginie Le Baler, the founder of Oui Immigration. At Oui Immigration, we support companies and individuals with all immigration processes in France and worldwide with one clear goal: expertise, compliance, and peace of mind. Wondering how current international events affect your talent's mobility? You're in the right place. Through We Talk, we bring experts together, answer your questions, and give you the tools to anticipate and manage your global mobility challenges. Immig just ran. Let's dive into this new episode of We Talk.
Welcome to this new episode of We Talk, the global mobility encounter by Oui Immigration. So today we'll spend some time in the United Kingdom, who's always quite active in terms of immigration, but has been particularly busy last month with the release of a white paper project. So we'll discuss it today. We'll discuss what this white paper means and what are the potential impacts on global mobility. To do so, I've invited Charlotte O'Connor from Agile Immigration. So, Charlotte, we've known each other for many, many years now, and I can always rely on Charlotte's UK immigration expertise. So I thought it would be great to have her today with us. She will introduce herself now. Welcome, Charlotte. Can you please tell us a bit more about yourself and your company?
Yes, of course, Virginie. Thank you. And as you say, we've known each other for a number of years. I have for those who don't know me, I have a UK immigration consultancy, Agile Immigration. And I also do some work with a US attorney based in New York. So we do some cross-border work, UK to US, US to UK, often existing clients, but sometimes referrals as well. And with a different hat, my consultancy is an immigration consultancy, but I'm also a solicitor. And so I have done recently some distinct contracts at law firm.
Well, thanks a lot, and thanks for being here with us today. It's no problem. So we're going to dive into this main topic of the We Talk today, which is the UK immigration white paper that was released recently on the 12th of May, and its name is Restoring Control over the Immigration System, which gives a pretty clear idea already of the theme. So could you please give us a bit of context about this white paper?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, we have a relatively new government, and obviously in all fields, and including in the field of immigration, they're trying to make their mark. I have an old school friend who works at the Home Office, and she had said to me previously that it's interesting because they seem to be biding their time, reviewing, what has happened to date before making announcements as to their plans. So these are plans of the new government. And maybe they've come after reflection, or maybe just it's come now because they've been dealing with other things to date. Something which is quite relevant also is that they are a Labour government. So in theory, left wing or more left wing, which again, sort of typically historically is a government that's maybe like less harsh on immigration, on immigrants. But I think it's also important to think about the fact that a Labour government is a government who's representing the working class. And so then also there's an element of protection for the resident working population. The other thing that both this government and the previous government have been concerned with is what's called the net migration figures. So that is the net total of migrants during a period. Immigrant minus the number of emigrants, i.e. people leaving, including citizens and non-citizens. So at its basic level, it means that the number of people coming into the country on a sort of 12-month plus basis is greater than the number of people leaving the country on a slightly longer term basis. And when I was sort of looking at preparing for the talk, the Migration Observatory is a body that releases various papers on these kind of subjects. And they said that UK is quite unusual in its choice to use net migration in these debates as the main measure for discussing migration levels. But the examples that they're giving is that basically from June 2019 to June 2023, the figures went from 224,000 to 906,000, which is obviously nearly a million. And then the comparable figures between 2010 and 2019 were around 200 to 300,000. And so obviously, that's a lot of people coming into the country compared to leaving the country, which is obviously in itself quite persuasive as to why they need to do something. But there are also economic arguments they're putting forward. And they're saying that while GDP has only risen by 3.4% in the UK, it has risen by 4.9% in the Eurozone and over 12% in the US. And evidence shows that when you bring highly skilled migrants into a country, that can have a positive impact on the economy by filling skills gaps. Whereas when you bring lower skilled migration, it actually distorts the local labour market. And an ongoing thing, which I was talking with someone this morning about, was the fact that UK workers are not being trained up in correlation with this influx of migrants. Whereas so normally, if you're bringing a lot of people in, you need to be training up local workers as well.
And so would that explain why this white paper was released? Is that one of the reasons, or what does it say about the current political atmosphere in the UK?
I think it is all of these things. I think it's this government trying to make its mark. It's the economic situation, as well as obviously these large numbers of people coming in theory. Obviously, these are all figures that we're presented with. So I haven't gone to further than obviously looking at the figures that are presented. But I do think there is a feeling that post-Brexit, the immigration situation in the UK is a bit of a mess. And I don't know, Virginie, if you have felt that, but it is kind of slightly chaotic and very different to what it was like. I mean, we met each other, I think, around 2012, 2013. And that period from then to 2020 was a very different landscape in the UK compared to how it's been since 2020. The skilled worker visa, which is our main visa to bring people into the UK, covers a lot of different jobs. And that's regardless of the fact that the salary requirements can be quite high, and obviously the cost of visas is high too. But you do look at if you look at the whole list, you do think, do we really need to be bringing people in from overseas to do these jobs? And there must be some kind of problem in the UK itself if we can't find workers to do these jobs here. I think something which people would admit we would have suffered because of Brexit is in relation to the trade skill. We received obviously a lot of skills from certain countries pre-Brexit, and that's definitely, I think, an area where the shortage of workers is felt. And the other thing I think as well is, because there's so many jobs that can be sponsored, because it's also encompassing, it's then more open to abuse. And I think that's obviously something else it's trying to tackle. And sadly, the care sector is this isn't so relevant to the sort of global mobility piece, but this is very relevant to the debate within the UK. The care sector is one which is open to abuse in itself, and also in relation to migration. But it's also an area where the UK has historically relied on immigration. But yeah, that's not sort of so much, obviously, in terms of companies bringing people in. That's obviously a very specific area, but one that is definitely part of the context from a UK point of view. And then the other thing I would say, I mean, I was surprised when Brexit happened that we didn't have more preparation of what the situation was going to be going forward. And I think, I mean, I don't know how much of that was lack of foresight, but it was also, I mean, Brexit happened at almost the same time as the pandemic. So probably, one thing overshadowed the other.
Yeah, well, yeah, Brexit was surprising at many levels, I have to say. And now something else that came at the same time, or maybe I'm confused, but with the white paper, we will be talking a bit more precisely about a bit later. But it's the statement of changes. Could you please explain what it is exactly, because it seems to be quite frequent in the UK.
Yeah, so we have what's called a statement of changes to the immigration rules a couple of times a year. And they're also why I think our immigration system in the UK seems to change so much. And that is also relevant is that immigration rules in the UK are subject to what's called a negative resolution procedure. So basically, it's almost like the government has the mandates, from being in power to change the immigration rules, and therefore they're not sort of debated in Parliament in the same way as some bills. And unless someone actively, says, disagrees with something, they sort of come in almost automatically. In relation to the statement of changes, so there was one in March, and there's usually one around October time. I think it was slightly overshadowed by the white paper, but there were definitely some sort of pertinent aspects there this time. And the one which is particularly relevant to kind of the sponsorship piece was about clawback agreement, which is in itself more of a kind of employment law thing. But these are agreements where a sponsor has with an individual that they're employing, that the individual will pay back some of the fees paid, whether it's legal fees or government fees, if they voluntarily leave the employment within a certain period of time. And the government's getting stricter and stricter on what an employer can claw back in that situation. And there was a term used in the latest statement of changes of immigration costs, because they'd extended it to sponsorship costs, which was basically immigration skills charge and a certificate of sponsorship fee. But there's this reference to immigration costs, and that hasn't actually, that we haven't received a definition yet from the government about that. But as I say, it feels like it's been slightly overshadowed by the white paper. So we'll see when that happens. But yeah, that can be quite. I mean, sometimes in relation to kind of expat transfers, everything is all included, but occasionally you see an agreement of. Because also when you're sending someone to a new country and with all of their family, you don't necessarily know if it's going to work out, if they're going to be happy there, and all of those. And if I guess if the family have indicated that it desire in the first place to want to move, then obviously that maybe puts a little bit of burden on one to also for the cost of the transfer, particularly if it doesn't work out. So that's another watch this space.
Yeah, makes sense. So, now that we understand a bit more what's happening in the UK, which is a bit similar to many countries in the world, basically financial and political tension in the country and its impact on immigration. now we can try to understand a bit more about this white paper we've been talking about, and that the newspapers and so on have been talking a lot about lately, and its impact on talent's global mobility. So I know it's a big document. I don't know how many pages it is, but it's quite a huge one. Could you share with us the main measures related to corporate immigration of global talents?
Sure. I think the main one, definitely from a UK's perspective, which I think has a potentially big impact on the attractiveness of the UK as a destination, is the potential move to 10 years for settlement on the work routes, currently 5 years. And while that's not always, as you know, a big ask for expatriates being assigned to the UK, it is certain people and certain nationals definitely. There's requisite that this 10-year period could be reduced based on contributions to the UK economy and society. But we don't know, again, what that is going to mean. And within the UK context, there's people I know who are near indefinite leave to remain, sponsored workers who are near indefinite leave to remain, who are very nervous about this measure, because the white paper indicates that it may apply to people who are already here. I think there may be some resistance to this. I think it's sort of big enough. There may be some resistance, but as I was saying, most of these rules are subject to the negative resolution procedure, so it could just be implemented like that. And I think there's only one which is sort of in a way less relevant to this discussion today, which requires an active bill to go through, which is in relation to a levy on international student fees. Ones which are more pertinent, I think, to companies sending people to the UK is obviously the increase in the English language level from CFR B1 to B2, which is a reasonably high level of English to have. I don't know what you see, Virginie. I think this is the English language in itself is something that can slow down transfers. While someone sort of goes off to take their test, if a test is required. And so obviously, increasing it from B1 to B2 may slow things down even more, or may mean that we see, along with the changes to indefinite leave to remain, that we see more people using the global business mobility senior specialist worker route. Which is a route, the predecessor of which we used to use a lot prior to Brexit. And this is already at RQF level 6. And I'll talk about later, but there are proposals to change skilled worker back to RQF at 6. So along with the changes to indefinite leave to remain, it may be that this route is used more. This route doesn't lead directly to indefinite leave to remain. And I have heard that this route it currently doesn't have an English language requirement, our senior specialist worker. And I've heard that it's not going to still. I don't know for sure. The interesting thing is I've heard that it won't, but potentially. So this is one of the other big changes. The dependents of the senior specialist worker may still have to prove their English language, which is another of the measures proposed, which is to introduce an English language requirement for adult dependents across more work groups. So starting at quite a basic level, A1, but moving to A2 for extensions, and then the same across to separate. And some of the reasons for this is because we have an English language requirement for dependents of spouses of British citizens dependent partners of British citizens or those settled in the UK, so to make those the dependent routes more in line. I think generally they're looking to make the dependent routes more in line because the route for partners of British citizens or those settled in the UK and for workers they're very different in their nature. So I think they're looking to watching different. And then, I mean, the obvious reason for this as well is obviously for integration, so that the families of workers are better able to manage in UK society and local communities. And then one which I referenced a minute ago was moving the skill level for skilled worker jobs back to RQF level 6. Which is what it was before Brexit. That's basically degree level. It's been RQF 3, level 3, which is sort of school leaver level, sort of baccalaureate A level. There's going to be some allowances for jobs which are in shortage. And where I see this affecting the immigration space will be people earlier on in their careers, so the kind of graduates, whether they are those who are already in the UK and looking to be sponsored, or those coming in, because I think along with such salary levels, it's going to be harder for employers to recruit people at the beginning of their careers than it has been to date. The white paper also say that salary thresholds are going to rise. And are they going to rise again? Because already they're, very high compared to local wages in a lot of sectors. And that's, I think, where it becomes, again, it's slightly different when people are being transferred in to do a role, because that is potentially part of a whole package. But definitely when someone from outside the UK is being recruited by a company within the UK, of course, there's only so much salary that they can justify for that person, because obviously salaries need to be sort of benchmarked with their local staff or staff wages.
Okay, and now very quickly coming back to this English language test. We've had the same in France lately. Now, if you want to request French nationality, you need to pass a B2 test, but not for the other work permit options. But what happens now if I put myself in the shoes of an HR who might be listening to us? What happens if the person fails the English test?
Yeah, as I was saying, I always think it's the argument for the global business mobility senior specialist workers is you can sort of send someone almost immediately, whereas of course you add in something like an English language test that you've got to organize it. If someone's not ready, they need to prepare for it. So it definitely adds time already. And then obviously if they fail that test, then that it adds even more time to the transfer.
They can't retake it, or it's not precise yet.
You can retake them. And actually, I was just looking at some providers, and quite often they have a sort of retake fee within, or you can pay. When you buy the test, you can buy to do the retake for a kind of nominal extra sum. So definitely. The test can be retaken, but they also advise, I think, if you fail and obviously you haven't organised your retake, to allow yourself the time to be ready to retake, so that you've got the right level. And even at B1, it's all encompassing. It's sort of very similar to kind of 16-year age at school, and GCSE taken in English is an alternative, if it had been taken previously. I've also heard of situations where the wrong test has been taken, an application has been rejected, and then the sponsors had problems getting a certificate of sponsorship again or second time round for the same individual. So obviously, something that for some time I've been quite hot on is making sure people absolutely choose, the right correct test, because they're very specific tests for UK visas. And that again is a historic thing where we had a lot of fake providers, and then they sort of clamped down on the system. And then there's also, introducing English language for adult dependents. If the whole family is coming, that's I think going to be a big ask. And that may stop transfers happening, or it may mean applicants just come to the UK on their own, at least to start. And I think it's kind of quite curious, actually. I think it makes me curious to see what level my French is. I have occasionally seen problems with the level at B1 for workers, not very often. But I wonder as well if it's increased to B2 for that initial entry clearance, if we're going to see more issues with people's level, because it's again you're looking at a reasonable level of English at that stage. Oh, and as we were discussing before, it makes me think I might go and finally do my training as teaching English as a teacher of English as a foreign language.
Makes even more sense now. And then I was going to ask you, so what could be, could an employer anticipate then, knowing all of that is going to happen? What would you recommend as an immigration expert? So it would be obviously anticipating, because immigration is always anticipating, but then offering language training, which would also include a new budget for each talliers you would like to send to the UK, that kind of things.
Yeah, I of course, it's always allow time. That is sometimes possible, not always. I think we might have, as I say, that if they don't bring English language for the senior or specialist workers in the company, and it's a possibility. That's one thing. Yes, as we were talking about a budget as well, for, as you say, language training. And then also, we've got, more increases to government fees too. So, which are due to come in. The immigration skills charge is due to have its first increase since it was introduced. And they say it's just in line with inflation, but it was introduced in 2017. So the increase is 32%, which is going to be quite significant. Preparation, budget, and I think probably obviously getting the advice as to the best solution for that particular transfer.
Thing important we did not mention here, I think, but it's that this white paper is not valid yet. It still needs to be confirmed by the authorities, right?
Yeah, and the white paper is just, I suppose it was an announcement of, it's just paper, exactly. It was an announcement of the government's plans, and so we have to see when they're going to start to implement it. But it's definitely not. It's definitely not in force yet.
And do we have an idea of when it could be implemented?
Well, funnily enough, the white paper itself says some measures are going to be introduced in the following weeks, but we haven't seen that happen yet. I think we are likely to see some of the changes brought in the autumn, potentially in the autumn statement of changes. And then I think in relation to the changes to indefinite leave to remain, well, what I hear or what people seem to think is that they won't come until next year, maybe next spring. So there's potentially a little bit of some time for that. And generally, I mean, yeah, this is obviously a mandate from the current government, and so that's between now and the end of summer. The current parliament is 2029. So I mean, they could come in any time between now and then. And then if you look at what's going on in the world currently, it may all get sidelined by other things.
All right. So yeah, basically, if you had to give recommendations to HR global mobility specialists, it would be to check out on what's going to happen with this white paper, what's going to become from theory, what's going to become really practical, when it's going to be implemented, how much it's going to cost. Because again, the UK always very surprising for us doing global immigration, but the governmental fees for the UK are always shocking for us. So it's probably not going to get better.
No, I don't think it. I don't think. I mean, I know it's. Obviously, it's an area which makes money for the country. The immigration skills charge is supposed to train up local workers. The evidence of how that happens is hard to come by, but that's what it's there for. But yeah, I don't think government fees are going to go down. I suppose, obviously, by moving it back to RQF 6 again, then you're looking at people who are more senior in their career, potentially on higher salaries, and so therefore the comparable costs may seem not quite as high. I've had executives I've worked with who have compared the fees to the fees of a recruiter, for example. They are sort of not necessarily so different to that. But yeah, I don't think they are going to. I don't think they're going to be reduced anytime soon.
Probably not. So yeah, very important to keep that in mind if you want to send people to the UK, talents to the UK. It can be a bit costly.
Yeah.
So, well, that was my last question/comment, Charlotte. Thank you very much for sharing your insights and expertise with us today. This is the end of this We Talk dedicated to the UK. If you have any questions or need guidance on immigration, whether it's in the UK or anywhere else, feel free to reach out. We're here to help. And if you found this discussion interesting, don't forget to share it and follow us for the next episode, probably in September. Now we're going to enjoy summer, and we wish you a great one as well. See you soon.
Thank you very much for listening to this new episode of We Talk. I hope this answered your questions. Of course, feel free to reach out to us if you have any more. At Oui Immigration, we're happy to guide you through every step of your global immigration strategy. Also, if you enjoyed this episode, feel free to share it with your network, and we'd love to hear your comments. Follow us on LinkedIn as well for the next episodes, and let us know if you're interested in a very specific topic or country. Also, obviously, if you're indeed needing our expertise, send us an email, we@we-immigration.com. See you next time for a new episode of We Talk.